we're going to talk. I'm going to pose questions to Barry, who has a fascinating story to tell, for about 20 minutes or so, and then you be thinking of your questions, and we're going to throw open the floor for a more general discussion. Barry, I don't know how many people here know the very intriguing story of your company, SecondMarket. So in case there are a few people who don't, could you just kind of walk us through the story of SecondMarket since its founding, maybe structuring it according to what you think were the most important milestones in its entrepreneurial development?
Yeah, sure. So we started our company. We launched in 2005. I was an investment banker for about 5 years. I know, boo hiss. I was here working in New York at Houlihan Lokey doing restructuring work. So got to work on the big deals of the last boom, things like Enron and WorldCom and U.S. Airways. The idea for this business actually was working on Enron. Very few things came out of the situation, but this idea did. And it was funny. I was a 24, 25-year-old associate with zero Rolodex, and I was handed a list of 200 assets that I had to sell. Things like pipelines and intellectual property and private company stock. And I was like, well, what do I do with this? And what I realized was, the whole process for selling assets, has always been very manual. And at the time, I said, why is there no eBay for this type of thing? I was pretty naive, but I said, heck, I can always be an investment banker. I wasn't married at the time, no mortgage, no kids, and I said, give it a shot. And so I left Houlihan Lokey in 2004 to start the business. Took about a year to put together the business plan. We raised about $350,000 in angel money from about 5 or 6 angels. And when we launched, it was pretty funny because it was really nothing more than 5 of us, 5 telephones, and an Excel spreadsheet. I mean, it's like the Wall Street version of a garage in Silicon Valley. And we were creating a market, and I'll put that in quotes, the old-fashioned way. We were just dialing for dollars, breaking down doors, saying, hey, do you have any of these assets to sell? And it's funny because I got some really good advice early on from it was actually the CEO of Houlihan Lokey, who said, you can approach this idea one of 2 ways. You can either go try to raise a bunch of venture capital money and try to build a whiz-bang system, or you can just start doing transactions and making some money. And that's what we did. And it's interesting because not that technology was an afterthought, but it really wasn't until about 2 years into it that we actually started investing in technology. But because we took his advice, 2 things came out of it. One was we became profitable from the day we started. So when we launched in the summer of 2005, we were probably up to 6 or 7 people at that point, and we were making money. So that completely changes the whole financing, process, as everybody knows. And the other thing that happened was we didn't build a platform that no one would want to use. We actually started building technology around the process a few years later. So we launched in 2005. The first asset class that we were focusing on was restricted stock in public companies. Really big market. Basically, any type of stock or converts, anything like that you have that you can't. Yep.
I should make an editorial intervention here. If anybody doesn't know it, what SecondMarket does is they have a trading platforms and effectively make markets in 7 different classes
7
now
asset classes,
of illiquid assets, or heretofore illiquid assets. Excuse me.
Yep. Thanks. So should have started with that. So this first asset class we launched, we're making money, we're growing our business, and then we were approached by Pequot Ventures, a New York-based venture capital fund that's now called FirstMark, where they recognized in us the opportunity to create a platform for trading lots of different assets. And so we raised about $4 million from FirstMark in the summer of 2007, and at that point we really just started investing in technology. We probably did, in 2007, we did, I think, about $2.5 million in revenue. Actually, no, $5 million in 2007. And so we had some traction, but we really weren't quite ready to scale. FirstMark came in, raised the $4 million, and started really investing in technology because we kind of saw the cracks forming on Wall Street, like these asset classes that everybody kind of knows about now, things like CDOs and credit default swaps and mortgage-backed securities. We were kind of seeing things happening. So we took in the money, and in early 2008, a big thing happened for us, and that was the complete shutdown of something called the auction rate securities market. So for those that don't know, hopefully you don't know personally, auction rate securities, it was a flawed investment product sold by our friends here on Wall Street, $330 billion asset class that was essentially sold. It was, you'd have money in a bank account and they would say you can put money in a CD, you can put money in a money market fund or in an auction rate security. And what happened overnight is the banks stopped supporting this whole auction rate market and it froze overnight, $330 billion. So here we were with this platform for restricted stock. We had buyers, we had the team in place, and in 2 weeks we launched a market for auction rate securities. And that was the aha moment for all of us. That was when we realized, you know what? This is it. This is our business. We are going to create a global platform for trading in liquid assets. And I describe it as our Beanie Baby moment, if you know the eBay history. So for us, auction rate securities put us on the map. We made a bunch of money. In 2008, we did $20 million in revenue. We then entered 2009, adding a number of new asset classes. So we added bankruptcy claims, we added limited partnership interests and hedge funds and private equity. Then we added the toxic assets, so like CDOs, mortgage-backed securities. And then most recently, we launched our most exciting market, and that's a market for private company stock. So I'm sure we're going to talk a little bit more about that.
We are indeed.
So today we have about 150 employees. We have an office in Palo Alto, headquartered here in New York. We have developers in Eastern Europe. We just 2 weeks ago closed a Series B round with Chairman Li Ka-shing and Singapore Temasek. Temasek's one of the Singapore sovereign wealth funds. And have a long list of asset classes we're going to get into and plans to expand this globally.
For me, this is a particularly interesting story because it's resonant with a lot of things that I've been studying and thinking about for the last few years. I just published a book last week, or actually Harvard Business Press published a book that I wrote called The Lords of Strategy, which is a history of modern corporate strategy over the last 5 decades, told in terms of the ideas, the people, and the organizations. And it takes it right up to the present day. The hottest idea in strategy currently, if you talk to the Boston Consulting Group or Bain & Company or McKinsey, they all use the same word, that strategy has to become adaptive. That means it has to move faster, it has to be not locked into long-term plans. It means a number of things. But one of the things it means, and probably the best description, comes from Martin Reeves, who's a partner at the Boston Consulting Group and the head of their strategic initiative. And when you ask him, well, what's the core of adaptive strategy? He tells you it's iterative empiricism. It's just not getting locked into a 5-year plan, but looking at the facts of your current situation and then acting on those, as you did on the advice of your friend and advisor from Houlihan Lokey, who told you don't go worrying about building these things, just start doing transactions. It's a perfect example of that. One of the other themes of modern strategy is that strategy of the last 20 years has become more and more about innovation because your existing competitive advantage gets competed away from you faster than ever before. I think you've thought a lot, I know you have, Barry, about innovation on Wall Street. And I mean, how did you look at that from what were the good kinds of innovation that were working and the ones that weren't?
Well, I don't know what people think here, but I think Wall Street does a terrible job innovating. What Wall Street innovates is product, creates new investment products. Usually it's to screw the retail investor, quite frankly, but there's someone down the line that's basically kind of being taken advantage of with a lot of the Wall Street product. A lot of things that were kind of good ideas early on, things like structured products, things like securitizations, they kind of get bastardized over time. And so what you see is very little innovation in the way of process. And so I look at Bloomberg Terminal, that's an innovation. NASDAQ, that's an innovation. Maybe even the first dark pool, that was an innovation, but there's really not much going on now. And so I think what we're doing is incredibly innovative. Now, Wall Street as a whole is making so much money off of the spread and the opacity that exists in these assets that we're certainly kind of fighting an uphill battle. But there's a tremendous opportunity because Bloomberg says that there's $50 trillion of these assets out there. It's probably the largest addressable market that exists in the world right now, and we're the only company that's actually trying to provide real transparency, real liquidity.
Well, now, this is so interesting. So you believe that, I mean, you're doing a sort of fundamental platform or market creating innovation, whereas the quants are over there doing innovation with respect to products. And you're obviously responding to what you see as an opening